For today's reading, we have Play Ball on page 30. And this is a new section following the Why My Father section. Page 30 has a photo of Jackie marrying his wife. And 31 has images of Dad and Mom aboard a bus heading for the Montreal Royals spring training in Florida, which we will definitely read the details about, and answering questions for reporters. We're going to be diving into this week more of the photographs and how we could analyze them and pull evidence from them. So page 30. 4 months after Dad signed with the Montreal Royals, my parents got married. The Reverend Carl Downs performed the ceremony on February 10, 1946 at the Independent Church of Christ in Los Angeles. My mother's mother, Zélie Issam, was thrilled to plan the entire wedding right down to selecting Mom's china, silver, and crystal. It was wartime, so materials were hard to find. Still, Zélie insisted that my mother wear a satin dress, so Mom went to Saks Fifth Avenue and found a pre-war satin sample wedding dress that had a long train. Dad matched Mom's elegance and a sharp pair of formal wear as they pledged a lifetime of love and shared dreams. So these might not be just the facts. This is a more like cutesy romantic version of their wedding instead of somebody just delivering the facts. And it definitely shows the personality and the point of view of their daughter. You know, their daughter's going to tell their love story differently than somebody just reporting the facts. Somebody who's a journalist might just say like the date, the time, a couple of details about how everybody looked, the food, but their daughter is, of course, using words like elegant and formal and pledging a lifetime of love and shared dreams. She really believes in her parents' marriage and their love, so that's why she writes it this way. Top of 31. 18 years later, my parents began the long trek across the country so that Dad could report to the Royals training camp in Daytona Beach, Florida. Branch Rickey had broken his own rule about not having wives at spring training and had invited my mother to join Dad. If I'm thinking of why would he do this, I go back to the last section that we read where he said he appreciated that Jackie had a supportive partner. And if somebody asked me, why do you think he broke this rule? I would assume that's why. Paragraph 2. When Dad and my mom arrived in New Orleans, they were forced to give up their seats on the plane. They were bumped from the next 2 flights. To add to the humiliation, they quickly discovered that because they were now in the heart of the South, they couldn't eat in the coffee shop. So, give up your seats, bumped from 2 flights, can't eat in this coffee shop. As soon as they travel across the country, we're learning about the difficulties and hardships that Jackie and his wife went through, and this is one of your post-it issues, and this is something that you're going to have in the back of your mind as you answer the questions. Luckily, Mally, a Southerner, had anticipated trouble and packed my parents a lunch. 12 hours later, Mom and Dad flew from New Orleans to Pensacola, where they took a segregated bus to Daytona Beach, Florida. It was a rough start, and shades of things to come. So this is like a foreshadowing line, shades of things to come. This like looming darkness is kind of foreshadowing, like more difficulties are coming up. My father joined black pitcher Johnny Wright and 200 white players for the Royals practice. Eager newspaper reporters from New York, Pittsburgh, Baltimore, Montreal, and Brooklyn fired questions at the 2 black men. What are you going to do if the pitchers start throwing at you? Duck? Dad joked. Would you like to play for the Dodgers? Do you think you're good enough to play with Brooklyn now? Dad answered confidently. He told the reporters that he'd played with white players before and was sure he'd make it through the minor leagues and onto the Brooklyn Dodgers team. After practice, the white players went to the Mayfair Hotel. My parents, Johnny Wright, and black sports writers Billy Rowe and Wendell Smith were housed in the black community, either in a motel or a private home. They ate their meals in black restaurants. Through it all, Mom and Dad were inseparable. I'd like us to take a minute and look over the photo that we have here on the next page. Remember what I mentioned about the daughter really being invested in her parents' relationship and the love that they have for each other and the support they have for each other. This photo is major evidence of that love for each other. This is from Jackie to his wife. Darling, the game starts at night. I did so much want to meet you at the airport, but time does not permit it. I love you so very much, and knowing I am to see you tonight makes things a lot better. Harold will have a ticket for you, or you can sit with the people that met you at the airport. Ooh, what's that word? It's hard to read the cursive. That way they know you were something is something. But the point is, the bottom little line that Sharon Robinson writes, her purpose of writing this, she shares with us. What I love about my parents' letters is that they always begin with darling. Once again, she reminds us of their relationship and how adoring and loving it is. So, photos and letters and these things can remind us of the relationship, the closeness of the relationship that might not be able to be said with words on a textual side of things, but also the time and writing letters to each other and just the closeness that that brings and how people used to do this a lot more than they do now. Top of page 33. The day after they arrived, the Royals traveled to Sanford, Florida for a week of spring training. As it turned out, Sanford was less welcoming than Daytona Beach. A few days into training, Wendell Smith and Billy Rowe rushed my parents and Johnny right out of town because of threatened violence. Dejected, Dad said he wondered if the same thing would happen in the next town. So he's getting kind of like bombed, more than bombed. The Royals moved their practice to Daytona Beach and had no further problems until they played games in Jacksonville and DeLand, Florida. The Royals front office finally had to switch their remaining games back to Daytona Beach. During games, proud black fans crowded into the Jim Crow or segregated section of the stands, while curious white fans filled in the remaining seats. On the field, the Royals' black players and white players worked as a team. When the game ended, they returned to their separate worlds. After a successful spring training, the integrated Montreal Royals took the field at Roosevelt Stadium in Jersey City, New Jersey, for the start of the 1946 season. Opening day was April 14th, 1946. There were 35,000 excited fans in attendance. Because school was closed, there were a lot of kids in the stands. It was a clear, sunny, brisk day, more than a football kind of day than baseball. Vendors sold coffee to keep the crowd warm. The mood was electric as the mayor paraded on the field with celebrities and players for the singing of the Star-Spangled Banner. Like there's this buzz and energy that Sharon writes here to get us into that mood. Dad hit a home run in the third inning with 2 men on, singled 3 times, and stole 2 bases. Montreal won the game 14-1. The fans mobbed Dad afterward, asking for autographs and wishing him well. It's a positive first game. After the Jersey City opener, the Royals headed to Montreal, Canada. My parents were pleasantly surprised by the warmth and friendliness shown to them by French Canadians. The Royals had different experiences in each city they played. Syracuse, New York was worse than Sanford, Florida. During one game, while my father stood in the batter's box, a Syracuse player tossed a black cat toward him, yelling, "Hey, Jackie, there's your cousin clowning on the field." Years later, Dad told me he had been furious, but he had responded by smacking the ball for a double. So instead of reacting personally, he takes his anger and puts it in baseball. A few moments later, a base hit sent him home with the winning run. As Dad rounded third base, he shouted to the players on the Syracuse bench, "I guess that relative of mine is happy now, isn't he?" In Baltimore, Maryland, the Royals learned that there had been letters and calls threatening violence and a boycott if my father appeared on the field. The Montreal Royals played as scheduled. There were 3,415 people at the first game of the series. The small crowd was tense and angry, very different mood from the first game. But as the Montreal and Baltimore series continued, the audience's mood changed. My father stole home during one game. The fans gave him a standing ovation. Dad was big news when he got some big news himself. Mom announced she was pregnant. Dad was on the road, but Mom couldn't wait for him to come home. She called Dad, thrilled to report that they were going to have their first baby. Dad was so sure his firstborn would be a boy that he later wrote back a joyous letter adding that he would make his son proud of him. Dad made good on that promise. During his one season with Montreal, he won the Battling Championship with a .348 average, scored 113 runs, ranked second in the league in stolen bases, and was voted most valuable player in the International League. The Montreal Royals won the pennant and the Little League World Series. Today, the 1946 Royals are regarded as one of the greatest teams in the history of minor league baseball. Top of 36. Oh, look, there's a baby. Mom left Montreal in her 8th month of pregnancy to return to Los Angeles to await the birth of their child. Dad joined her as soon as the season ended. True to his prediction, they had a boy. Jack Roosevelt Jr. was born on November 18, 1946. He was a gorgeous baby with a head full of curly black hair. Mom and Dad stayed on the West Coast surrounded by family and friends until Dad had to report to the Royals spring training. Despite my father's successes in 1946, however, it looked as though yet another Major League Baseball season would start without a black player on any team's roster. Then on April 10, 1947, less than a week before the official opening of baseball season, the Brooklyn Dodgers played the Montreal Royals in the last game of the exhibition season. Dad hit into a double play in the 6th inning. Right after that play, a history-making announcement was made. The Brooklyn Dodgers had purchased my dad's contract from the Montreal Royals. Dad trotted back to the dugout. Fans and teammates cheered. Jackie Robinson was going to the majors. Jim Crow was going down. 5 days later, Dad played his first major league game at Ebbets Field, the Dodgers Stadium in Brooklyn, New York. An exuberant crowd watched the Dodgers beat the Boston Braves 5-3. My father played first base and went hitless that game, but later that week belted out his first major league home run when the Dodgers played the New York Giants at the Polo Grounds.